What's up, Brunch Bestie? Welcome back to Business and Brunch, the podcast where we keep it real about building a business that actually supports your life, not one that drains it. Today, I'm joined by the incredible Jenny Suneson, podcast strategist, CEO of Podcasting for Moms, and the queen of making visibility feel simple and sustainable, especially for moms. She has been in the online space since 2016 and now helps mompreneurs launch and grow their podcasts in part-time hours without burning out or relying on social media to make sales. So whether you're prepping for maternity leave or just feeling over the IG grind, this episode is full of practical tips to help you grow your business your way. Let's get into it. Hey Jenny, let's start from the top. Tell us a little bit more about your journey. How did you go from a VA working to running a boutique podcasting company for moms?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't want to be here for hours, but I started my business back in 2016, being a virtual assistant slash social media manager, and I did not have kids yet. And that was really easy to just manage everything because I didn't really have kids. But I knew that's something I wanted one day, like down the line. And I kind of realized that being a VA and doing social media management wasn't really like super sustainable for when I did have kids. And then, I decided to start a podcast and it was really, really fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of it. And then I realized, maybe this is something I could actually do. But I didn't really explore it too much further. I just kept doing what I was doing. And then I had a client come to me looking for VA services, and she also had a podcast. And she was like, hey, can you help me with my podcast? I'm like, sure. I mean, I've never done it for anyone aside from myself. I've done it for client, or not a client before, but I've done it for myself. But if you're willing to take a chance on me, like, yeah, let's do it. And she's like, sure, yeah, I'm down. So she became my first like hybrid VA podcast client. And then from there, I kind of realized that's what I wanted to do. Like, I just loved it so much. It was such a fun process. So from there, I kind of just like slowly pivoted to podcast management, podcast launching, all things podcasting, and started kind of leaving those VA only clients kind of behind one by one because I didn't want to like drop them all and have like little income. So I started just slowly getting rid as I was getting, new podcasting clients onboarded. And yeah, that's been the case ever since, early 2019. And then since then I've had two kids. So I had one kid in 2020 and my second in 2023, the end of 2023. Yeah, it's just been a really sustainable service-based business to have because you can work ahead. And, I know a lot of people like move out of providing services once they have kids, but I found this to be really sustainable because of, being able to work ahead and not having like worrying about trends like you would for social media and things like that just allowed me to be able to keep my service-based business instead of like pivoting to something completely different. So yeah, that's a little bit of the backstory. And now in 2025, I've been working primarily with moms. So I kind of pivoted my company to be called Podcasting for Moms. It used to be Savvy Podcast Agency, but I kind of niched down in working with moms. Not to say that I don't serve people who don't have kids, but that's just my target audience now. And that's been really fun helping moms get their message out into the world. And, before then I was primarily working with moms anyway, but it just wasn't like in the branding. So I was like, well, that's who I'm working with. So might as well just go all in. That's where we're at now. And yeah, I can't believe I've been doing this like podcasting focused thing since 2019. So what? That's 6 years now, which is just wild. It doesn't feel like it's been 6 years since then.
I feel like you're a veteran whenever it comes to all things business and growing a business, especially since you have gone through multiple life changes. Well, the main life change of stepping into motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest questions that I got last year was, how did I plan for maternity leave as a business owner? And
Mm-hmm.
since you have done it twice
Yeah.
and you have a different type of business model than I do, I would love to dive into how was your first plan for maternity leave? Was that one kind of like a rocky little situation, or did you go into it kind of knowing exactly how to support your business for however long you took for maternity leave? Or was it
Mm-hmm.
something that you learned from the first time to make the second one more smooth?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like it was actually really good. Like I don't feel like there was that many hiccups. I mean, of course there are things like looking back that I'm like, oh, I could have prepared for this a little bit more or done this a little bit better. But like there was nothing like, oh my God, there's a fire and I feel like my business is gonna burn down because I've been gone. I was out of office for 3 months. So my son was born in June of 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. Super fun time to have a baby, let me tell you. And business was crazy booming because everyone and their mom wanted to start a podcast because there was lots of time. Everyone was like at home and they had time to sit behind the mic and start these new projects. So like I was turning people away because I was like, I'm going on on 3-month maternity leave. Like I can't bring on any launch clients right now. Yeah, it was wild preparing because I literally had boarded a client like maybe a week before I gave birth just because everyone wanted to launch and it was just crazy. And I felt like guilty turning people away because I was like, this is like the most action I've seen, ever in business. And so I was taking people on. I didn't take on anyone in that 3-month period. I was very good about that because I didn't want to overwhelm myself. So basically, since I have a service-based business, a lot of people think like, oh, you have to like stop offering services for that 3-month period. And that was not the case. I did not take on any new launches of podcasts because that is like a 6-week period. So I didn't do that. However, we did have a bunch of monthly management clients. I want to say we had like 7 or 8 monthly management clients at the time for my first maternity leave that we kept on. And what I did was I had on a couple team members that were handling like the editing, the show notes, uploading, that kind of thing. And then I already had that before I went on maternity leave, but then I brought on a temporary like OBM type role to serve my clients for that 3 months while I was out. And they kind of did what I did. So they were kind of making sure the client was happy, the primary communication point for the client. Essentially, they were just acting as me for that 3-month period. And then once I was done with maternity leave, they left. And, I still had my core team, but I was back to being like, all of a sudden you have this new point of contact and it's not me. I really made sure to like integrate this person into my team more than 3 months prior. So I think we started about 4.5 months. So they had about a month and a half experience with the temporary OBM before I left. And I did a couple like trial runs, like I'm gonna be gone Friday through Monday. I wasn't really gone, but I just like pretended I was gone so that to see how smoothly things could run, and that so the client wasn't like relying on me up until the last possible second before they absolutely couldn't anymore. So I feel like I went pretty well. I mean, like I said, there's like minor things that I could have changed, but I didn't feel like there was anything that was like, oh my God, this was horrendous and it made me come back to work earlier than anticipated. In fact, I feel like I was itching to get back to it earlier because I just felt like I was kind of bored at some points. Because, like when they're that little, they sleep a lot. So there were moments where I was just like, I'm really bored and I kind of want to work. And I told myself I wouldn't work on any client work. So I was really strict about that. But I did do some things internally during that maternity leave just to save my own sanity because I was getting really bored. I'm like, okay, I feel like I've already gone through all the TV shows I wanted to watch, gone through everything that I possibly feel like I could. So I just started doing a couple like internal business projects that, had been on my list. It wasn't like absolutely must get done type things, but just things to just keep my brain engaged. And, I felt like had that connection to my business still without being, involved in the day to day.
Now, did you feel at any point during or after maternity leave that your business no longer served the structure that you had in place and you had to like burn it down or feel like you needed to restructure things whenever you're coming back? Or were you pretty confident in knowing that you're going to have a baby that is no longer in the newborn stage that needs more of your time, that your business would support you being a mother and a business owner?
Honestly, since I already kind of had some help in place with the team, I didn't feel like super like I needed to change that much coming back because I already had people on my team. Now the team has evolved over the years. Like, now we're in 2025. My team in 2020 was of 2 VAs and a podcast editor plus myself. So it was on the smaller side. Everyone was contractors, part-time contractors, no full-time people or even like part-time employees. No one was an employee status. And, since then I've had, back in, I think 2021, 2022, my team got up to like 8 or 9 people, not full-time or part-time, all contractors still, but that was the biggest it got. And then now it's literally just me and one other person. So I've kind of evolved, not because of being a mom, just kind of more so just the markets changing and my business model changing a little bit, but I still offer services. I've never changed that. And I didn't like switch to just doing only VIP days or only like a 1-day service. I've still maintained the retainer clients because I just really like the stability of that. And I found that, I do have help in terms of childcare. Neither of my kids went to daycare immediately, but my son went at a year and then my daughter started going around 6 or 7 months just because they had a spot at my son's daycare and we were already familiar with it. So I do have childcare, and that I think that helped too, to not have to be like completely shifting my business model once I had kids. But I can see why people do it because, if their kid is home with them 24/7, then yes, you probably need to make some changes. I do have childcare, so I didn't feel the need to like completely burn things down and restart, but I still don't work like 40 hours a week like I used to. Now it's
Mhm.
more like 20, 25 sometimes when I'm in like a heavy launch phase or something. But for the most part, it's about 20 hours a week, which is still, sustainable for me, and which is nice. I try not to work weekends and nights. And I know that's not the case for everyone. I know some people, when you have your kids home, you don't have the luxury of being able to work, aside from nap time or nighttime. So that has been helpful for me. But yeah, I could totally see that if I didn't have some sort of childcare, that I probably would have switched my business model a little bit.
Well, it probably helps that you were also in business for a while too, so you were able to
Hmm.
kind of get the kinks out and kind of know a good structure, and having that team support is really
Right.
important too. The
Right.
big question, how do you handle when your kids get sick and it throws
Oof.
off your week?
I still suffer with that sometimes. It's like even just last week. So my daughter had chipped her tooth like pretty bad last weekend. And Monday I had to take her to the dentist because the dentists weren't open on the weekend, right? And I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know if she was gonna have to get it pulled or, something happening. So I took her on Monday, but that was like a day off. Obviously, normally she would go to daycare. And, it was fine, but I hate having to move meetings and things like that. That's always been a struggle for me because it's just such a pain in the butt to be like, sorry, got to cancel all these meetings. Thankfully, I try not to schedule things for Mondays or Fridays. Those are, I mean, yeah, aside from like podcast interviews, but like I don't have any like client facing things on Mondays or Fridays. So it's, I kind of save that for the middle of the week, which kind of helps because my kids usually, if they end up getting sick, it's like, oh, they got sick on Sunday and then like they need to be on Monday and Tuesday. And then I can kind of move things Wednesday and Thursday. But it's still kind of work in progress. I don't love when that happens because it does kind of throw. I like my routine. I like my rhythm. So yeah, I do have like, I just make sure I have a lighter day. And it depends on the kid who's home too. Like my son's 5, he doesn't nap. So when he's home, I do absolutely nothing because he doesn't let me. The second I try to do something, he's like, what are you doing? It's like literally he could be watching TV or whatever. And like the second I need to do something important, it's like, and I get him all set up with his iPad and snacks and whatever he needs. And without fail, it's like, what are you doing? Like if I hopped on a Zoom call or something. Whereas my daughter, I can plan a little better around it because she does nap. She takes a nap every day from like 12 to 2 ish. So that is easier to plan around. Whereas like my son, it's like, oh, I'm not getting anything today until nighttime, So it depends on the kid too.
Mhm. Temperament is big, at least for your little girl that from 12 to 2, you have a good
I
2 or
have
3
time to do
hours
something.
you
Yeah.
can work. Whereas the little one, I swear it's like the computer or just anything that is like takes the mind off besides like cooking. My little one, he doesn't care if I'm cooking, but as soon as the computer comes out, and he's only 14 months almost,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Ooh,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is
They're like, oh, what's
fancy."
this? Yeah. And like my 5-year-old, like I could be doing like something that is like mindless on my computer and he's fine. But if I'm doing like, if I need to be on like a client call or something, he's like, hello, how are you guys? What are you doing? I'm like, why? Why do we need to make an appearance? And like my clients understand, but it's still just like it. I can't think when my child is like asking questions like, who's that on the other end of the screen? I'm like, just play with your toys, please.
Little social butterfly.
Uh-huh.
Now, when it comes to either planning on maternity leave or taking time off as a mom, what do you think other mom entrepreneurs overthink or get wrong prepping for that time off?
I think people just need to be a little more like realistic with their expectations. I feel like people like think they might have more time than they actually allotted for, or they don't think about all the little things that go into it. So just be realistic and give yourself grace. Like things might be different and you might have more time than you anticipated, but it might not be. And you might have a hard baby, you might have a fussy baby when it comes to like a newborn or something. And then when it comes to like taking time off, just yeah, prepare in advance. Like for me, I just recently, I mean, I haven't taken a maternity leave since 2023, but we went to Disneyland for a week. And, when you're going on a week vacation and you're a business owner, you're not just like preparing that week, you have to prepare the week after too, because you're not going to get back and all of a sudden be able to do like a million things. So I literally did all of our client episodes like 2 weeks in advance so that, I mean, I try to be at least a week ahead, but I was 2 weeks ahead for this time. So it would go the week I was gone plus the week after. Cause like a lot of my clients were publishing on Mondays and Tuesdays. So it's like, if I came back the next week, Tuesday, Monday would not happen, but Tuesday would make it hard because I would have to like be doing everything on Monday to make sure they were publishing on Tuesday. So, I try to stay a week, at least a week in advance, but 2 weeks for vacations and things like that. So just like prepare in advance and, prepare more than you think you need to too. I feel like even, if you're going on vacation for a week and you could prepare for the next week plus the week after that, if you can, is makes it so much easier so you can ease back into it. Because when you have kids and you go on vacation with your kids, not the same as going on vacation with your spouse, like you come back and you're like, oh, I need a vacation from my vacation because that was not like, I mean, I went to Disneyland and, we were doing a bunch of walking and my kids were just crazy and hyped up on sugar. So I came back and I was like, I do not feel rested. It was fun, but I did not feel rested. So yeah, just give yourself grace and, try to prepare in advance as much as you possibly can. I know we can't like think about every little thing that might come up because it didn't happen yet. I created a contingency plan for both of my maternity leaves. Like, if this happens, then this, and this happens, and then that, and this happens, and that. Like each little thing that could potentially happen had like a solution. And, like I made sure that my, temporary OBM at the time was only contacting me if it was a straight up emergency. Like I didn't want to hear, or like we would touch base once a week, right? But on a regular basis, I didn't want her contacting me unless it was emergency because I didn't want to be freaking out because I was already in the throw of it. I mean, both of my maternity leaves involved recovering from a C-section. My second one was planned, so that one wasn't as crazy. But my first C-section with my son, it was an emergency C-section, so I didn't know that's how my journey was going to be. So, I was healing and, trying to be a new mom and all that stuff. With my second, it was like I had a planned C-section, right? So the recovery time was better because I actually got to sleep the night before. I didn't go into labor naturally the second time, so I felt well rested after my C-section because it was like, oh, I slept the night before, I went in, and then it happened. But yeah, so just kind of making sure that you kind of have the things in place so that you aren't feeling overwhelmed and stressed out by your business, especially as a service provider. Because I know sometimes I've seen horror stories where people are like, I was in my hospital bed 2 hours after giving birth responding back to clients, and it's like, I did not want that to be me. I don't want that to be you. If you're listening to this and you haven't had kids yet, or you've had kids already but you're pregnant with your second or third and you don't want to have that kind of experience, because it's not fun to be like feeling like you can't even step away for a day without things falling apart.
So that leads into another great thing that you do, I think, really well is not relying on like social media to grow your
Mm-hmm.
business or to stay visible, which I feel like that is where a lot of entrepreneurs get kind of stuck, is because that pressure to show up of what if I take the time off or take a maternity leave, then I can't show up online anymore. I can't show up on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram's posts, sell my offers, all the momentum will leave. So how did you shift your mindset and shift your business strategy to not rely heavily on selling on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok,
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah. Social media has been like, I've had a love-hate relationship with it for years. And a couple years ago, I just stopped, like, I myself permission to stop focusing on it. Like, I'm like, I don't really need this. Like, it's just draining me. I'll post on it if I feel like it, but it's not something that I rely on to make sales, get new clients, all that stuff. And I really went all in on two things. So my email list is number one, and then my podcast is number two. Not like in that order. Literally, I feel like they're kind of both on the same level. I found that social media was just like, it was draining me. I didn't feel like I was getting results, and it just felt like another thing on my to-do list. And once I got down to only having like 20-hour work weeks, like that was not even near the top of my radar of things I needed to do. And I just kind of saw my email was converting well and my podcast was converting well. And I just wanted to pick platforms that made sense. Like, if it's going to convert well, yeah, let's focus on it. If it's not, why am I still doing it? So I kind of dropped pretty much everything except for my email and my podcast. I do post on Threads because I do like that platform, but if I stop posting Threads, I would be okay too. But I like that platform. I feel like it's an easy platform. I don't have to make graphics. I don't have to show up on video. I don't have to do any of that extra stuff. And like, there's lots of cool people there to connect with. That's one of the platforms that I like. But if I stop posting on Threads, I'd be okay too. But email and podcasts, they're just something I can do like in the little pockets of time that I have, where social media, it's like, sure, you can like engage in little pockets of time, but like thinking about creating captions and stories and graphics and battling the algorithm, it's like, no, thank you. But with email, you're not battling any algorithm, like sure, people will unsubscribe, but like they are likely seeing your stuff unless they are subscribed to like thousands of emails. So you have a better opportunity to catch people's attention because you're not getting suppressed by an algorithm, right? It's just like if people are in their inbox and they're active, they're probably opening your emails. If they don't want to get them anymore, they unsubscribe. Whereas like on Instagram, it's like maybe they do want to see your content, but it's not being served to them for whatever reason. That's you can't really do anything about it. And then with the podcast too, it's similar. Like there is the search capability so you can get found from podcast SEO and things like that, which is really helpful for getting new eyes. But people who are listening to your podcast are loyal people. Like they really like you, they really resonate with you. So really focusing on that avenue has been really helpful for me, and that gives me one long form piece of content. So like if I were to be like, let me just go repurpose this onto other places like Instagram and social media and other places, I have that content to do so. So that's why I've always like really liked my podcast, and it's a really great way for people to get to know me better before they join my email list. They can listen to my podcast, learn from me, kind of see if I'm the person that they may want to work with in some capacity, and then they join my email list, and then we go from there. And not to say you can't do that on social media. It's just, I don't know, social media just it just feels heavy. And I think it felt heavy before I had kids, but after having kids, I'm like, I can't. It's just too much. Like, I don't want to put on makeup every day. I don't want to like be camera ready all the time. And I also just don't want to spend my time on a platform that is like suppressing things, like suppressing my posts. Like, that just doesn't feel lucrative as someone who doesn't have a ton of extra time, you know?
Now, before you kind of let go of social media as a strategy, what did you look at for, let's start with your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
for actual analytics and results to show that it was actually converting and growing so that you could have that comfortability to just say, goodbye, social media. You're done with my everlasting checklist, because I feel like every day it grows of like the checklist on social media grows of how you
Mm-hmm.
can grow and build your brand and
Yeah, it's
the
just too
things.
much. There's like, oh, now there's reels, and now there's these things called trial reels, and now there's just like, ugh, it's just too much. Yeah. So for my podcast, a lot of people like are like, my downloads are growing. That's good. But it's like, yeah, sure, that's good. But like also it's not really the whole picture. So one thing that I really like to look at when it comes to my podcast in terms of like, cool, downloads are great, but like I also like to look and see how many people are opting in to my offer from my show, and I have specific tracking links so I can tell like, oh, this came from my podcast or this maybe came from somewhere else, right? So I will look at that, see the conversions there, see how many people, like when people are joining programs and things like that and they're filling out the intake form, they're saying, oh, I found you from your podcast, things like that. So that's where I'm seeing like that's the main metric I'm tracking. But I also like to look, Apple Podcast has this thing called consumption rate. So I like to look at that too. Like, so for example, like downloads are great, but like someone could listen to like 60 seconds of your podcast, or not even 60 seconds. They can hit the play button and it can, it and stop it. And then it's like, oh, that's a download, but they didn't actually listen to anything really. Yeah. So the consumption rate shows like how like much of the episode has been consumed. So like if you have like anything higher than 50% on your all like across your episodes, then that's good, right? You want to strive for 50% or more. I generally get 70+% per episode on my episode, so it means that people are actually listening to the episode, right? So that's another metric to look at that is better than downloads. Those are kind of the top two, but I think the conversions is into my free and paid programs is like number one, because if people aren't joining my email list and they're not getting into my paid programs, then what are we doing here?
So you're using your podcast to not only grow your email list, which also converts, but also directly get people into your paid offers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which one do you feel like kind of converts better? Or does it just depend on like the audience or that person of like maybe they need more time to consume your email and they just weren't ready? Or do you feel like your podcast, since you've been doing it for quite a while, that
Mm-hmm.
people jump into your paid offers right
I think it
away?
depends on the offer. Like if it's a bigger priced offer, I feel like they need a little more nurturing. Whereas like if it's just like a low ticket thing that I'm like, hey, I have this product that is related to this episode that I feel like you guys would enjoy. Here it is. Like I feel like that's easier for people to say yes to. But yeah, I know this could be controversial, but I've always said like leading into the free thing is better because then you can continue talking to them on the podcast and they're like, oh, they join your email list and now they just don't listen to your podcast anymore. I mean, that might be the case, but it doesn't mean that every single person that joined your email list like isn't a listener anymore. I feel like you can kind of double dip and nurture them on the podcast and an email, and then it helps make that buying decision quicker. But yeah, I don't think it's like one or the other. I think you can do both. It just depends on the person, and some people are ready to drop $500 in an instant, others aren't, and also depends on the current state of like people's buying process, right? Like I feel like it's a kind of a longer cycle now than it was a year or two ago. People are taking longer to make decisions in terms, like even if it's a $20 product, because I think people have been burned so many times, especially in 2020 when so many people entered the online business space that probably should have never entered the online business space as providers, and people got burned, and now they're just kind of like they're using a lot more discernment before they're making purchases, plus like also the economy too, like so people are kind of holding back for several different reasons. But yeah, I think it just really depends. But yeah, I think both can work. Depends on your audience, depends on your offer, depends on several different factors, but I think both can be lucrative.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. Buying process is, I always tell people that retire the mindset of it takes 7 times because it's more like
Mm-hmm.
42 times because a lot of people just, that trust was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, just like things are expensive. So, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never,
So like people aren't prioritizing your product because
yeah.
they're like, let me just make sure that I can afford the groceries at the grocery
Mhm.
store before I'm like spending any extra money. I mean, yeah, and even just in with the people I've signed recently, like some of them have been in talks with since like February or March. We are literally now in almost August. Like it's late July when we're recording this. So it's like people are just taking a longer time to make a decision, and it's not like anything we're doing wrong. It's just people are just a little bit slower to come to their decisions, which
Mhm.
is just I mean, it sucks as a service provider. You're like, great. And then everyone comes at once. You're like, cool, I talked to all these people in March and now they're like, let's do it. And you're like, great, this month's gonna be really busy, But yeah.
What would you tell a mom in business that is looking to kind of get off of social media? She wants to free up her time. Would you tell her, like, and she's interested in podcasting, would you tell her
Mhm.
to do guest shows first or just
Mhm.
go balls to the wall and go ahead and create like your own podcast if you think that you can stay with it
Yeah.
consistently?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say start with guesting just because it's like more lower lift and you can see if you actually like the medium. Sometimes people like being a host, but they don't like guesting too. So like that's not like it shouldn't be a deal breaker. Like if you like are like, oh my God, I hate this in terms of like being a guest. However, like if you just hate the medium in general and you're like, oh, audio just doesn't work for me, then yeah, I wouldn't go all in. But yeah, I always recommend people getting their feet wet with guesting a couple times before they start their own, just so you can kind of get a feel for the process because, it is obviously different as the guest. You're not having to do all the production piece of it. You need to know you like the medium before you commit to like going all in on hosting it yourself, right? Because
Mhm.
and I had people who haven't guested before and they end up loving the podcast realm, but I feel like if you can guest first, why not?
Yeah, go ahead and expand that visibility. Do you have
Hmm.
any great examples of either like client wins or your own collaborations where you've seen that be really impactful in your business?
Like guesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people, so for myself, I've had people sign me like from episodes that they've heard me on other people's shows, not just my own, but other people's shows as well. And I've had clients that have gotten really great success too. Like I recently had one of our clients that we do pitching for. She has her own podcast, but we just do the pitching for her. She was a guest on a podcast. And then, right after she finished the interview, they're like, hey, I'd love to have you speak about this at my upcoming virtual event. So, she got the opportunity to be on that podcast and now she's going to be in this person's event, which could lead to more clients for her and different things down the line. But yeah, and then, I'm not sure if she's gotten any like direct opportunities aside from that, but I think that's kind of where the dominoes begin to kind of align and everything falls into place. It's like, a cool, you know, you got this podcast guest opportunity. Now you're going to speak at someone's virtual event. And, from there, that's when people are like booking you to, or joining your programs or booking you as a service provider if you're a service provider. So I feel like it takes a little bit, but things start to align and, you start getting additional opportunities from it where they're like, oh, this person was such a good guest. I want I want to connect you to this other person that has a podcast, and then they kind of connect there. So I've seen that too, where people, they like the guests so much that they recommend them to other people, and then they kind of start guessing on other podcasts that we didn't even pitch them to because they're the person they interviewed on saw would be a good fit for other people they knew in their network. So
So, in a world of basically overnight wins, especially since the lovely digital marketing girlies have promised big wins overnight, how do you communicate the value or the strategy or the wins that podcasting may not be an overnight win and that it will eventually pay off? How do you, one, communicate that, and two, encourage women in business, moms in business to keep going when like growth is slow?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, and I've never been one for like the quick win viral strategies. I've always gone through the long-term things. Like even back in the social media days, like I primarily focused on Pinterest, and Pinterest is another one that's like not an overnight thing. So I've always been a long-term results kind of person, and that can be hard for a lot of people because in this day and age, we really want that instant gratification. Like, oh, cool, like it's like binging a Netflix show. Like, oh, the whole season doesn't drop overnight. I don't want it, right? You're like, I don't want to watch every week. Like we got spoiled. And I think a lot of people feel that same way. Like they don't see the results in like a week or two. They're like, all right, this isn't the medium for me. Let's try something different. Honestly, like podcasting is definitely a longer term game. Like I feel like after like it takes about a year to really start seeing like pretty consistent results. I mean, of course, there's things you can do like before that year period to like kind of expedite that. But I feel like after a year, you've gotten more confident behind the mic. You are kind of what you're doing. You have that. You knew your message all along, right? But you really just got more solid in that messaging. You feel like you're just more comfortable, you know things better. I mean, if someone's first episode is not better quality than their 50th episode or in the same quality in terms of like content, sound, everything, like, that's an issue. Like we're supposed to improve, right? So I feel like that's another thing too. Like you're growing, your show's growing, you're seeing results, you're learning the ins and outs of how to sell on your podcast, all those things. You just got to be patient, give yourself grace. Like there are going to be some months where you probably do see an uptick, and then maybe like the next month it's like a little bit lower or it's the same, and people will drop off at different stages too. Like if you have a podcast about podcasting like I do for like, I mean, I have two podcasts, but that's one of my podcasts. Like maybe someone decides, oh, I don't want to start a podcast, or they unsubscribe. That's okay. Like I've seen that quite a bit, but then like I get other people who are like, oh yes, I'm interested in certain podcasts. So then some months looks like I didn't grow at all, even though I technically actually did because, there was just a little bit more drop off that month or whatever. So we just need to be, just look at the data, write it down, but don't make it like, don't attach too much meaning to it because it's like you're gonna spiral and be like, why doesn't anyone want to listen to me? There's only 10 people downloading my show, yada yada yada. But it's like, okay, well, if you didn't have a podcast, then those 10 people wouldn't be listening to you, right? And like 10 people, like, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of people, but what if you kept going and that turned into 20, 40, 50, 60, all the way to like 300 people per episode? Like that's not a small audience. Like if you were in a room speaking to 300 people, that's kind of a big deal. I would be terrified, to be honest. Like, because like I'm not a public speaking person. Like I am an introvert. That sounds terrible. But 300 people listening to my podcast, cool. I love that, So you just need to be patient, like let it, if you get 6 months down the line and you haven't had any growth, okay, cool. Like you may need to make some tweaks, right? But if you're seeing a little bit of growth, like a little bit of an uptick, like you can probably make some changes and continue growing and, figure it out from there. But yeah, I usually say it takes about a year to really start seeing like true growth and, really feeling comfortable in your show. And most people don't really want to stick out that long to see those results, but it really does make a difference if you just like stay the course and let it happen. And like I said, if you're getting 6 months online, you haven't had any growth, like you literally have had, like say you had 20 downloads every single month for 6 months, like yeah, you there's some things you can do to improve, right? But if you're seeing a little bit of growth, like a little bit of growth month over month, then just keep at it, and you're definitely going to, as long as you keep going and as long as you keep putting yourself out there, they're not fixing anything with like search engine optimization. You can kind of, there's lots of things you can do that. You can update your title to have some keywords, update your name field, update your podcast description. Those are like some small tweaks that can really help. And a lot of people don't think about that. They just have their podcast name and that's it. But it's like, okay, if your podcast name is not something people are searching, then of course they're not going to find you. So add some keywords into that to make sure that, you're maximizing your chances of people finding you. And, being on other podcasts, that's another great way to get people back to your show too. So, and don't just rely on your podcast to just all of a sudden be found. Like, don't just rely on SEO, don't just rely on podcast guesting. Try to do different things, like tell your list every time you have a new episode, things like that. Like, you don't just want to never talk about your podcast anywhere else and just expect it to grow, because it's not going to be the case.
I love that,
I know that was a lot.
especially as a new podcaster myself. I'm still growing, and even I think this will be episode 17 technically. And even
Mm-hmm.
from like the first 5, 10, 17, I've been able to tell like my content has just gotten better. My message has just gotten better.
Right.
And I try not to stress too much because I am a data analytic girly.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to stress
Mm-hmm.
too much on the keywords and SEO because I'll spend 4 hours looking for the perfect keywords for search engine results. But with business and brunch not being a really searchable name, it was just
Term.
something that I wanted more of a vibe with, knowing that it's not just all about having good content. There's a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of, data to go back and
Mm-hmm.
look through and just kind of
Yeah. And it depends on the
analyze.
months too. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, my podcast has been kind of on the decline for the past couple months. I'm like, well, what month are you looking at? They're like, oh, June, July, and August. I'm like, well, summer is technically slower for a lot of podcasters, especially if you have an audience of moms, because moms during the summer are, they're not doing their regular commute to school or wherever. So they're not listening to podcasts as much, or they're on vacation or whatever. Same with like December. December is historically a lower download month in the podcast space. So that's another thing to look at too. If you're like comparing June, July, and August to like your numbers in October, it's going to be different because people are
Mhm.
consuming differently in those months.
That's another good thing to keep in mind as well as you grow anything in business. The season
Mm-hmm.
of the year is really big. I always try to do less during the summer and like less
Mm-hmm.
during the holidays just because one, I want to have fun. But I
But like, if
also
there aren't that many people listening, it doesn't really matter anyway. I mean, I still put out episodes in the summer. I'm not taking off like 3 full months because that's kind of crazy. But like, if I look at my numbers and I'm like, oh, they're not that great. But I've had like an uptick this summer, which is funny. I'm like, I guess people are like, oh, doing things differently this summer. It's been kind of a weird year. So I guess we're backwards this year. Everyone got a slower start. I feel like everyone started their year in like February this year. Like, January just like didn't happen or something. I don't know.
2025 has been a weird year in general,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
But now, before we leave off our guest, what would you say, what is the main takeaway from planning for maternity leave, just being a mom in business and using different visibility strategies outside of social media? What is the main thing that you want our moms to know?
I want people to know that you can take a maternity leave and have it be successful, have it be restful, and be able to like breathe and not feel like you have to come back to your business 2 seconds after you have a baby, because that is not the case. It doesn't need to be the case. I know it's been the case for so many people, but it doesn't need to be the case. It's so easy to just, like fall back into our routine and like get back to work in like 2 seconds, but we don't need to do that. And like, that's probably why you start your business, right? You didn't start your business to like have a 2 second maternity leave. Like, if you wanted to do that, you could still be in corporate. So I feel like we just need to give ourselves more grace in that postpartum period and really just allow ourselves to like get to know our new baby, get to know, especially if you're like a first time mom, like that's such a big difference. I mean, when my daughter, I still took a 3 month maternity leave, but I felt like I wasn't as like, I don't know, I didn't feel like I could have done it less if I really wanted to, because I already kind of knew what I was doing. I wasn't like starting from scratch, and you have a brand new baby, it's like, oh my God, your whole world is rocked. And then when you add a second, it's like, okay, like I remember this, it's not too bad. Like, it sucks not sleeping, but it's not as like, not every little like thing that happens is not like the end of the world. Like, I remember with my first, every little thing, I'm like, oh my God, is he okay? Is he okay? And with my second, I was like, oh yeah, that's just some gas. All right, let's give her some drops or something. Oh, okay, she's probably hungry. Like, I would just think, like, I just didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. So, just give yourself grace, prepare in advance, and give yourself a dang maternity leave for if you can't do anything. like give yourself at least 2 weeks. Like you need something. Like I obviously am an advocate for longer time periods, but I think we all need at least 2 weeks because it's just a lot. Even if, no matter if it's your second or third or 10th child, I hope no one has 10 children, but if you do, you know, give yourself time. Like we all need time to heal and get to know our new baby. And yeah, and your business can wait. It doesn't matter if you have a coaching business or a service-based business. Like, I mean, I was able to, I mean, even if I didn't have a team, I would have brought on people to help my clients, serve my clients, because I didn't want to go without income for 3 months. Like that's not sustainable for most people. And yeah, and you never, you know, when you have digital products and things like that, you never really know. Even if you do like have these launches planned, you never know how it's going to go. So I just wanted to have some stability while I was trying to figure out life with a newborn.
I love that. Giving yourself grace is what I'm all about. First of all, you started your business to live your life in general. Why, at the end of the day, are we prioritizing work when in the reality, we started our business to prioritize our life in general? And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest reminder that our audience needs to remember is that work can wait, money
Yeah.
will always come, but those precious moments of your little baby or your newborn or being able to go take vacation, you'll never
Mm-hmm.
get those back. And I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that you have the same mission. I've always been a fan of your mission and just watching you grow and just expand into the business owner and mom that you are has just been such a fun journey to watch because I've been in your community for I think since 2020 at least.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's been a long time.
I remember the Podcast days. I'm one of the OGs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jenny, where can somebody go to get your support, binge all your stuff, kind of like drop how you serve your people? Where's the best way to find you? Obviously, I'll have all your links in the show notes, but what is one thing that you would say if you want to start a podcast or take some time off or learn a different strategy outside of social media? What is a few or the one main thing that you would be like, jump on this today?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to learn how to start a podcast, check out my podcast called Podcasting for Moms. That is where I drop all of the info on how to start, grow, and scale your podcast. But if you are just, wanting to learn from someone who's been in business nearly 10 years, not just about podcasting, but just generally, you can check me out on Threads. My handle is just at jenny.suneson, just my name. So yeah, that's where I hang out primarily aside from my podcast and then I have my website and everything where you can learn more about my services. And that's just podcastingformoms.co because .com was taken, unfortunately, which is funny because no one actually uses it. It's just reserved. But yeah, so that's where you can find me. And yeah, I love chatting and I have DMs on Threads now. So now I don't even have to go to Instagram to DM people, which is super nice. I don't think everyone does though. So I still go to Instagram until it's confirmed that everyone does because I don't want it to just like end up in the abyss because they don't have the DM feature yet on their account. But
And I believe they have to follow you or you have to follow them back.
yeah,
It's still a
that
little
too.
funky. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, but oh well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on Business and Brunch, Jenny. This has been such a great conversation, and I think my audience of moms, the ones that show up and listen, will really enjoy this because you have so much value packed in this. And on top of that, you've been in business for a while. You know your shit. You've been through 2 maternity leaves, and you still continue to grow and thrive as a mom today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, brunch bestie, how good was that? Jenny is such a breath of fresh air when it comes to building a business that works with your life, not against it. Whether you're planning for maternity leave, craving more ease in your visibility, or ready to get your voice out there through podcasting, she is your go-to girl. I've been in her world for, I think, since 2020, and I have loved her ever since I've been connected with her in the online space. So make sure you check out the links in the show notes to connect with Jenny, explore her offers, and grab her free resources like the mic drop method and the podcast growth blueprint. And if this episode gave you a little clarity or confidence boost, do me a favor, screenshot it and share it on your stories and tag us. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway. Until next time, keep showing up boldly and building that spacious business you actually want to run. I'll see you next week on Business and Brunch.